Hi, everybody. Welcome to Rachel's Reviews. I'm really excited to be here for the second part of our look at the movies for winter 2018 and then into 2020. So this is November, December, January, but now this is part two because it just was so long. And I'm film critic Rachel Wagner, and I'm here again with my friend David Healy.
Yes, I'm still here, ready to talk about more movies.
Woohoo! So Uncut Gems you saw.
I did. Uncut Gems, another one, didn't have high expectations going into, and watching it, I'll be honest, it is probably the most stressful movie
I've heard
experience I've
that from
ever
people.
had. And I didn't have any warning about that. I didn't know that that would be the thing I'm hearing all the critics say. But there was even a part, like a third of the way into the movie, where something could either go right or go wrong. And I told myself, if this goes wrong, I'm tempted to just walk out of the theater right now because I don't want to do this to myself.
Mm-hmm.
Luckily, in this instance, things worked out. Um, so I kept watching, but man, I was so tense. And at first, I thought that was a bad thing, but it really, like, the more I reflect on it, I really like this film. I thought they did a great job. Like, especially like you don't think of Adam Sandler in these serious
Wait,
roles
here's the question I have
too
for you.
often.
Is it good because he usually makes terrible movies, or is it legitimately good? You know what I'm saying?
No, I think it's legitimately good. In fact, when I left this, I was like, this kind of reminded me of a movie from 2018 that I really like. And then come to find out it's by the same directors that made that movie. So
Mm-hmm.
I guess but it reminded me a lot of Good Time. I don't know
Yeah.
if you saw that.
Never did.
Yeah, it was one of my favorite movies of 2018, and it's really stuck, or maybe was that 2017, maybe? I don't know. But that's a movie I've been wanting to revisit. So I don't know. I think the Safdie brothers are really a pair of directors to look out for. I'm excited to see what they can do next, and I actually would like to watch this movie again, knowing when everything's going to work out and when it's not. That way, my blood pressure could be down, and I could just really enjoy what's happening to this pretty terrible person. I mean, the
Mm.
lead character is not a likable person, but you still root for him to do well and to succeed, even though he keeps making horrible choices. Um, I don't know. I think it's a great film. It should have been nominated for at least something at the Oscars. So
Mm-hmm. Okay.
yeah, I
Uh,
put this at 31,
okay, good.
and I could bump it higher.
Mm-hmm. All right. So then we have Bombshell. This is the movie based on Gretchen Carlson's story about sexual harassment at Fox News. And you have Nicole Kidman playing Gretchen. You have Charlize Theron playing Megyn Kelly, and then you have Margot Robbie playing a mixture of people. And I thought this movie was pretty good. I mean, I think it's important to tell everybody's story, not just liberal perspective. To tell all of the if Me Too is going to work, you have to tell all the stories, and so I appreciated that. And I have to say, like the people they got for all the smaller roles just were spot on. I mean,
Mhm.
it was really impressive. I'm like,
Yeah.
that looks like Sean Hannity. That looks exactly like Bill O'Reilly. I'm like, how did
Mhm.
they do that? It was very impressive. And then, of course, you have the makeup of the three women. Particularly, obviously, Charlize Theron looks so much like Megyn Kelly. It's
Right.
uncanny. It's amazing, and so I think that I think that the script could have been better. Uh, that it could have been a little bit more. It gets a little cheesy at times, and I don't know. I felt like I didn't really love the Margot Robbie character. I don't think she deserved the nomination. She's a good actress, but I don't know. I just felt like I wanted a little more depth
Mhm.
from her, and in particular, and try to understand their choices a little bit more. and I'm sure that they were curtailed by, various non-disclosure agreements and things like that they had to be careful about what they did.
Right.
But I just felt like it could have dove a little deeper into these women, and part of it, it felt like a TV movie a little bit to me. And I love TV movies, so that's not necessarily critique, but there was something felt like they could have made it a little more cinematic. Aside from the makeup, that was the most cinematic part of it. But anyway, I still liked it overall. I gave it a 53.
Okay.
Did you
You
see it?
ranked it. You ranked it at 53.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I
Okay.
ranked it at 53.
Okay. Yeah, I did see this. So going into this, I was a little bit nervous. First of all, I'll say I'm not really a fan of Fox News, the network, but
Mm-hmm.
I still didn't want to see a movie that was just going to be a hit job on
Right.
everything Fox News, kind of like how Vice was. I didn't want to see that again. I thought
Mm-hmm.
that was a poor choice for Vice, and I wanted to see something that was fair.
Right.
And I actually do think this was a pretty fair film.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it was targeting all conservatives, everybody involved with Fox News. In fact, even Roger Ailes,
Mm-hmm.
I think I think they gave him more of a positive perspective than I would have guessed,
Mm-hmm.
which is like very shocking to say. But they didn't make him seem like a terrible monster throughout. Um, so I appreciated that. I thought the acting was strong. Um, I did have a hard time getting past how Charlize Theron was speaking. The way she was trying to really imitate Megan Kelly's speaking patterns was a
Mm-hmm.
little distracting. But I don't have a lot of grievances with this film, so I put this at 38.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, it's an interesting one.
Mhm.
Okay, then we had Togo. This was on Disney Plus, and I didn't know what to expect, and I ended up loving this movie. I thought that it was so well done. There's particularly these two sequences when they cross this pretty thin uh, uh a sheet of ice over this lake, and I was very tense at both of those sequences. It was very, I don't know, it was just very well done. I thought this, especially for a kind of a TV level type movie, is what I was expecting. It's
Mhm.
definitely what Noelle was, the previous release. And for that level, I thought the special effects were really impressive. And I just was totally engaged, and I thought William Dafoe was great. And it was just it felt like a throwback to the Disney films of the 90s, like White Fang and Iron Will and those kind of live action films, which they really stopped making for a long time. Like we haven't gotten the smaller Disney live action releases uh, yeah, since the last one I can even think of was The Queen of Katwe, which was 2016, and uh, everything that we've gotten in live action since then has been remakes basically, and so it really was fun for me to see this, and I'm really excited about that potential with Disney Plus to be able to get more movies like this. So I really enjoyed it. I have it at 43.
Yeah, I never saw this, but I thought it looked pretty interesting,
Yeah,
so
it
I may
was
check
good.
this out sometime too.
It was good. I recommend it. So then we saw Cats. What did you think of Cats?
Yeah, Cats. Cats is not something that I'm familiar with, the story. I've never seen the musical. I don't know most of the songs from it other than memory.
Uh,
Um, and I didn't see this for about a week or so after it came out, so I was hearing just people trash on it left and right.
right.
So when I saw it, it wasn't as bad as I expected.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't particularly good by any means, but I didn't hate it. I thought some of the acting was pretty strong. Jennifer Hudson was good. I was
Mm-hmm.
surprisingly impressed by Jason Derulo. Um, but yeah, it's just not something that's gonna stick with me. Something I'll never revisit.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Like I did go fresh on it, believe it or not,
Hmm.
barely. It was right on the edge. Uh, I I thought that it was creative. I thought it was something new. I
Hmm.
appreciated that. I liked the songs for the most part. The dancing was good, and I certainly did not think it was the dumpster fire that people made it out to
Right.
be, for sure. I did think that I hated the whole Rebel Wilson cat sequence that in the cockroaches. Oh, I didn't like that. But overall, I thought it was just something kind of quirky and fun, and it was a little boring at times for me, surprisingly. There were times where I was like, okay, let's move it along. But I don't know. I have it at 113.
Okay. Yeah, I think what another thing about it that I didn't expect was that the whole, at least the first two-thirds of the movie, we're just meeting a new character each time. And
Yeah.
usually we get introduced to our characters pretty quickly in movies, but it just felt like a big build-up to not really have a plot at the end.
Yeah.
So, but
No,
maybe
that's
that's,
true. And that is true to the play.
yeah, and that's
Um,
probably more of a grievance to the play than
yeah.
the movie itself.
And also, so when we went to see this, we were at the screening and there were these teenage boys that were being so
Oh
irritating
no.
the whole time, like making loud comments about how terrible this was and how, like, just awful, so annoying. I just wanted to say, like, don't be that guy. That's the worst. Like,
Yeah,
if you're going into a movie expecting to hate it, you're gonna hate it. And second of all, at least allow other people in your theater to enjoy it.
right.
Like, keep your opinions to yourself. I was so irritated with that.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the case for most people. Most people probably went in this expecting to hate
Yeah.
it. So it was just kind of confirmation bias.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had this at 107.
And there's definitely some reviews that I'm like, okay, I get it. You didn't, you've explained your opinion. But then
Hmm.
other reviews I felt premeditated. Like they had basically written it out in their head what they were going to say, whether it's on YouTube or on a blog. They and then they went and saw it just so they could say they saw it. But I don't know. I feel like you're saying, a lot of people didn't even give it a chance. So
Hmm.
what are you gonna do? And then we had Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. I actually saw these on the same day. I saw I saw Star Wars and then I saw Cats on the same day.
Nice.
But what did you think of this latest Star Wars?
So I think a lot of what I have to say about this latest Star Wars really has to do with how upset I am with the fans and how they
Uh-huh.
reacted to The Last Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
Um, First of all, like I really liked The Last Jedi. I think it's by far the best in this new trilogy of Star Wars
Mm-hmm.
movies. And the Star Wars fanboys were so butthurt that their predictions, they had, oh, I predict this about Ray, this about so and so. They were so butthurt that their predictions weren't what came from The Last Jedi. I guess they wanted to write the movie itself, and they were so obnoxious about it. It was a very well reviewed movie,
Mm-hmm.
but these loud, obnoxious Star Wars fans scared Disney, scared the original director of this film, scared everybody out of doing anything creative, anything that I don't know, that had like an ounce of an imagination. It scared them out of doing anything but a safe project for this third movie.
Mm-hmm.
And those people are who are to blame for this being a disappointing film. I don't hate it. I thought it was mostly like serviceable, but it could have been so much more. I put this at 55 for the year.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So this movie, I think it was really messy, and they
Mhm.
were trying to tell way too many stories and way too many characters, and all of the new characters were completely unnecessary. Like, why did we need Kerry Russell's character? That was not needed. And there was a ton of fan service. Like, we didn't need Lando back. Like, it was fun,
Right.
but we didn't need it. It didn't really do anything for the story. I did love what they did with Carrie Fisher. I thought that was classy. I thought it totally worked for me.
Hmm.
I did. I really liked it. I thought that bringing back the Emperor, I don't know. It was okay, I guess. I really loved the whole moment when they the Poe's in the ship and he pulls up and he realizes there's the whole squadron or whatever of people to support them is there. That was really a fun moment, I thought. And yeah, I wasn't a big fan of Last Jedi, but it didn't ruin my childhood. I wasn't a jerk about it. But so I liked it better personally than Last Jedi. That was not for me. But I don't know. I felt like this got back to sort of the spirit of adventure that I like in Star Wars. It's kind of the way that I see the franchise is being kind of pulpy and fun. And this was more that way. And I love Kylo, and I was a big Reylo fan. That was the one thing I liked about Last Jedi. So I was kind of a fan of that. If I get people's complaints about it, but I liked it. And it did look nice. It was disappointing, but the whole trilogy honestly has been pretty disappointing. And I have it at 71 just because I do like Star Wars,
Right.
but I don't know. The whole ever since Force Awakens, I've been kind of disappointed. And I realized after I saw this movie, I'm like, you know what? Star Wars isn't maybe as good as I thought it was. Like when I look back, I'm like, I love those three, and then pretty much almost, and then I loved Force Awakens, but most of Star Wars has been disappointing in my life. Like,
Yeah.
am I really a fan of this franchise? Like I thought I was when what, like 7, 8 of the movies I haven't liked. I mean, that's not a good track record. So I don't know. It it is what it is, I guess. I have it at 71.
Okay. I see where you're coming from. I mean, it seems like we definitely disagree a lot on this trilogy, especially, I guess, The Last Jedi.
Yeah.
Um, and I guess, like, I I don't know what they could have done better with Carrie Fisher, but I personally did not like what they did with her. It reminded me of sometimes when, like, an animal like gets old and it's about to die, it just like silently walks off to a corner, lays down, and dies. And I felt like that's what they did with her character. I'm like,
Mm,
she didn't talk to anybody, she didn't say a word, and somehow other people knew what she was doing,
mm-hmm.
and it just made her seem like an animal to me.
Interesting.
So I thought it was
Yeah.
a weird choice.
Yeah, I mean, they were in a tough spot,
Yeah,
but I was surprised how much they used her. Very surprised.
yeah.
And I don't know, for me it worked. I liked it. And I I was not a fan of what happened with Luke in The Last Jedi. That was one of my biggest disagreements because he's the most loyal character in the history of cinema, and him to all of a sudden with no prequel of any kind, for him to become this person that's throwing lightsabers, and it wasn't for me. I didn't like that. And so I don't know. I just felt like, well, at least one of these original characters got kind of a heroic, uh, got an ending that moved me and that I liked. So I don't know, but
And
maybe my expectations were actually pretty. I was nervous,
mhm.
but I like Star Wars when it's just a pulpy, fun action adventure movie, and that's why I love the first one. New Hope has always been my favorite, and this I just felt like had some of that spirit of adventure that I liked. So
Yeah,
that's why.
I will say there was one character in this movie that I really liked. Can you guess who it is?
No, I don't
Okay.
know.
It's Babu Freak was his
Oh
name.
yeah, so cute.
Little
Yeah,
guy.
I liked it too.
Hey!
Yeah.
He cracked me up every time he was in it. So I
Yeah.
liked him.
So I don't know what they're gonna do. I just
Yeah.
the whole trilogy to me. I mean, all the Disney Star Wars films to me have just been kind of messy and underwhelming. And I look back on how much hope I had after Force Awakens, and oh, it's just too bad.
Well,
And
maybe when we get the new movies, maybe you should just have a new hope.
yeah, maybe I should. Okay, so I loved Star Wars Rebels though, so at least I have that.
Okay.
Um, and so then 1917, what do you think?
1917 was the movie I was most looking forward to
Uh,
out of this block of 3 months. I'm not sure if you remember me talking about how excited I was. Like, I remember saying, "Oh, the trailer gives me chills every time I see it." And I will say it did not disappoint,
yeah.
and it is definitely my favorite movie out of this 3 month chunk.
Yeah, it was
Um,
really good. I really
yeah.
enjoyed it too. I have it at 15. It was a really
Okay.
hard for me one for me to rank because it doesn't have a huge rewatchability factor for me, but I was very engrossed and very engaged, and I was pretty upset after I saw it. It really emotionally worked for me,
Hmm.
and I know some people are like, "Oh, it's just a gimmick, the one shot thing," but it really immersed me in the situation and made me sad, and I I really thought it was very very good.
Yeah, and that annoys me if people are saying that that's a gimmick because really, I don't think the one shot thing, it didn't really add anything to the movie. Like it was just this like bonus icing
Yeah.
that was enjoyable. Like it was something that's a great accomplishment, but the movie stands alone without that.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, in fact, I've been saying, like, when people ask me my opinions on 2019 movies, there are two movies that I say are like basically perfect films, and this is one of them.
Yeah.
And the other one, you
Ooh.
didn't even give a fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. And
Oh,
this is
yeah,
a
your
perfect
last Black
film, The Last Black Man in San Francisco. But yeah, I think 1917 is pretty flawless, and I really am hoping it takes away Best Picture. Um, you all know, we don't know yet.
Yeah, we don't know. Um,
So,
okay, so then on Christmas Day, we had Little Women. So this it was by Greta Gerwig, and I feel like I'm curious to hear your thoughts because I feel like she definitely made this kind of assuming that people knew the basic structure of Little Women, and which I don't know. I'm fine. I'm fine with. I guess because I have the advantage of I really love Little Women. I'm very protective of this whole property. I hated the versions in 2018 that we got. It was not for me. So this, I really enjoyed it. I thought that particularly what they did with Amy was very creative and it helped you because a lot of times that can feel like a little like the Amy plot, Amy and Laurie plot can feel a little like a we got to match her with somebody, you know, and he's not
mhm,
with Joe, so we got to figure something out, and it just doesn't feel that earned. And because she literally was trolling her fans when she did that, because everybody kept writing her these letters saying, "When are Joe and Lori gonna, get married or whatever?" And so she was like, "I'm gonna put her with the most unlikely person you could imagine, this professor." And so anyway, it sometimes feels a little bit unearned. But because they had the structure that they did, you saw Amy with Laurie very early on. And so that felt way more earned than in the other versions. And I thought the casting was pretty good. I think that they could have done more with Beth. I felt like that was kind of glossed over. And that's such an emotional punch, usually.
mhm.
But I really liked Emma Watson as Meg. I thought that she did such a good job of I love that line when it says, and just because my dreams are different than yours doesn't mean they're not important. I loved that, and so I really enjoyed it. I have it at 14.
Okay. Yeah, so watching this, I was a little bit confused on what was added to this movie that wasn't in the story
Hmm.
and what was I don't know if I still don't know if the whole movie was actually what's in the book. Um, or if there's
Yeah, it's pretty much right. It's pretty much accurate. The
so she's
only
selling a
it's
book to a publisher.
like the ending was kind of cute. It wasn't. Yeah, that's added,
Okay.
but pretty much everything else it was just jumbled around. But pretty much
Mhm.
everything else is in the book.
And can you tell me what sets this apart from the 90s version?
So the biggest difference, the 90s version, it's still my favorite. It has
Mhm.
two Amy's. It has little girl Amy and it has grown up Amy, which
Okay.
I think works better than you believing this grown woman is
Yeah.
a child is ridiculous.
Yes.
Um, but so that's a big difference. Also, it's not nonlinear. Um, and normally I hate nonlinear storytelling, but I gave it a pass for this one just because I felt like it did so much to help me with the Amy Laurie situation. So yeah, that's the main differences.
Okay. I'll say the non-linear stuff did not work for me at all,
Mm,
because I don't know the story, and I would get very confused in what timeline we were because we're
hmm.
making 7-year jumps, and the characters look exactly the same to me.
Right. I get
Like,
that. Yeah.
I had to memorize, okay, she has her hair like this in one timeline and
Yeah.
this a different one.
Well, and it's
So,
weird too because it would have been so easy just to put a little, I don't know, like 1860 or whatever,
mhm,
like just a little typeface,
yeah,
for different scenes. I don't understand why she didn't do that. Also, in the 90s when Claire Danes plays Beth, and she's like devastating. When the Beth scene when she dies, like it's devastating,
yeah,
and she really brings the cries and brings the feels. And like I said, I felt like they kind of glossed over Beth in this one, so
right,
that's
and
another difference.
she was the one sister who I didn't know, or the actress I didn't know,
Yeah.
surrounded by all these big names, so, like, I cared about her the least based on that alone to start with, and also I come to find out that, Florence Pugh, which her character was insane in parts, like, destroying her sister's book.
Yeah, that's
But
in
then
the
I come to
book.
find out she's supposed to be 13. She was not 13.
Yeah. No, it's true. I mean, that's the two Amy thing works better because I mean,
Mhm.
it's also there's one from 1949 with
Mhm.
Elizabeth Taylor playing Amy is so ridiculous. She looks absurd. Like she's going to this. She's a grown woman and she's like going to school and getting scolded by her teacher. You're just like, what is happening? Uh, yeah, I mean, it's true. That's a problem with the story because Amy's the youngest, and she, I don't know. So
Mhm.
it's tough, but
Yeah.
I do think, in fact, my title, my review was two Amy's are better than one. But I just have such an affection for the story that that it's higher up in my rankings, probably because I just really love Little Women,
Right.
and I it was done so badly in 2018. I hated it.
Mhm.
So I don't know. That's part of it for me, but yeah, I get it. I get the complaints. I do.
Yeah. And that's fair. Like, I am not saying this is a bad movie. I will say this is not a movie for me. I'm not the
Uh,
target audience for this. I don't care about this story very much. It didn't do much for me. So I put this at 104, and
mm,
it's actually my lowest ranked of all the Best Picture nominees,
mm-hmm,
barely edging out The Irishman. They're definitely the two that I don't care for as much out of the 9 Best Picture nominees.
mm-hmm,
And one thing that I definitely want to say is I've heard a lot of people who are up in arms about the fact that Greta Gerwig didn't get nominated for Best Director,
mm-hmm,
and how it's an all men Best Director
mm-hmm.
lineup again. And to those people, I want to say, shouldn't we have a woman nominated for Best Director when she's actually one of the best directors? I think Greta Gerwig has so much potential behind her. I don't think this is it. This isn't the film. I would have
Mm-hmm.
given her a nomination for Lady Bird over this. Um, so I don't want to see, like, it would be pandering.
Yeah, I mean,
It'd be patronizing to give it to her just for being a woman when she isn't one of the best of the year. So,
yeah, I mean, frankly, I the only in my top 10 of the year, the only female director that I have, unless she you count Jennifer Lee being, she was more producer in Frozen 2. But Blinded by the Light by Grinda Chadha was one of my
Hmm.
favorites. And so I mean I basically I do agree. I personally I kind of have the same thing with you about Joker, that I see why people like it. It's just not, it's not for me.
Hmm.
And I I don't know. So I certainly would have picked Greta Gerwig over that, but over Todd Phillips. But it's just, they're so different. It's apples and oranges.
Yeah.
And but yeah, I do agree that we don't want to give sort of patronizing nominations, and that doesn't help anybody. I could have seen the Farewell getting. I certainly was shocked that The Farewell didn't get nominated for
Yeah.
Best Supporting Actress.
Right. I
I
agree.
thought for sure she would, and she would have been deserved, in my opinion. But anyway, yeah, I agree with you on that for sure, 100%.
Yes.
Uh,
Can we just give it to Sam Mendes already, anyways?
yeah, I know. That was kind of my thought, that it's like, well, let's just give half the awards to Parasite and half the
Yes.
awards to 1917. Everybody
Yes.
will be happy.
Yes.
Boom.
Win-win.
Win-win. That's what I thought. And save us all of this award season.
Yes.
Uh,
Ironically, two films that didn't get any nominations in the acting categories.
yeah, that's true. Okay, so then we have Spies in Disguise. And I was pulling for this movie because I love Blue Sky and I don't want Disney to dump Blue Sky, and I worry they will. But it was okay. I didn't love it. It was fine. I thought that Will Smith was pretty fun. And I liked sort of the message of not using violence, and uh, that was nice for kids. I just didn't like the bird stuff. It's just not for
Mhm.
me. But it was decently animated. It was, if you're looking for a action fun movie for kids, it's serviceable. I have it at 74.
Yeah, this movie was just okay for me. I would
Yeah.
say it was very slapstick, like
Yeah.
one of the most slapstick movies I've seen in a while. Um, so if that's not your thing, you're probably gonna hate it. Um, but yeah, my biggest complaint is I don't remember much about it, and it's just been a little over a month since I've seen
Yeah.
it. So I put this at 92.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I wish it had been better.
Yeah.
Okay, then the third was The Grudge. You saw this?
Yeah, so we're jumping into a new year now.
Yeah.
So I have my new rankings now. I saw 11 movies from January, but I've seen 16 total for the year so far. So The Grudge is 16 out of 16. And I'll go ahead and say this is one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life.
Oh my gosh.
It's really bad.
Terrible.
Yeah. And I didn't think it could get worse than the original Grudge, but it made that look like a masterpiece. Um, if you like horror, it's got some decent horror elements as far as visuals go, but as far as plot goes, it is so meandering and nonsensical, and it really feels like a montage of random things happening with no actual story, and it's so hard to describe. Um, it's just terrible. Um, and January's been a pretty bad movie, so or bad movie month for me.
Mm-hmm.
So for this to be the worst in this January, which was terrible, that says a lot. So yeah,
Yeah.
awful movie.
Ooh. All right. Glad I didn't see that one. Okay.
Yep.
Then there's Like a Boss, and I did see this, and I thought that when they were with their friends, there were some pretty funny parts. Like when when they're smoking the joint at the baby's room. I thought that made me laugh.
Yes.
There were just a couple of funny scenes, I thought, with their friends. And I love the one lady who's on American Housewife, who's super catty and stuff. Like she she was the mom, I think. Anyway, she was really funny. So I enjoyed that part of them, and I did feel like they had pretty good chemistry as friends.
Hmm.
But I thought anything with the Salma Hayek character was super cringeworthy and not funny. And the whole, you could tell this was written by men, because the whole sort of, why is it in movies like this that they always have them in the cosmetics industry? Like, I feel like that's the only way Hollywood thinks that women make businesses and successful businesses. Like you think of the I Feel Pretty,
Yes.
or just tons of these movies. And uh Jennifer Coolidge is hilarious. I didn't hate it like some people did, but I didn't go fresh on it. Right now, because of Sundance, I've seen 32 movies in 2020, and I have it at 24.
Okay. Yeah, so it's funny you brought up I Feel Pretty because it kind of reminded me of of that,
Yeah.
especially like the end part where they kind of take over the
Yeah.
business
Which was
meeting.
the weakest part of that movie.
Yeah. Yeah. So it already feels like this movie is just out of date, you know?
Yeah.
Like this feels like something that would have worked better probably in 2017, and it doesn't feel very fresh right now.
Mm.
With that said, I still laughed at parts. I did laugh at Salma Hayek's character. I actually thought she was one of the better parts of the movie, so I guess we disagree there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm actually very impressed with her in comedies because she was my favorite part of The Hitman's Bodyguard as well.
Oh yeah, I didn't even know she was
Um,
in that.
yeah, she is, which I think is getting a sequel this year called The
Yeah.
Hitman's Bodyguard's Wife, which is her character. So, but
I don't
for the
know. She
most,
was just too over the top for me.
yeah, yeah, but I guess I like seeing that from her because
Mm-hmm.
that's not what I generally associate her as being.
Mm.
So it's kind of funny to see her branch out and do this like very different character for herself.
Like, if this was on, this is one of those movies that honestly, if it was on like cable and I was just
Mhm,
watching it, it would be okay. Like, I'd
mhm.
joke a little, I'd laugh a little bit, and it would be fine. But if I'm telling people go see it, go spend $20, which tickets practically are, no, it's not on. It's not. No.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I still like it way better than most of the movies I've seen in January. I put this at 7 for the
Mm-hmm.
year so far. But still
Yeah.
not a great film.
So you saw one called Three Christ.
I did. So this is a film with Richard Gere. He's a psychologist. This is based on a true story, where he finds that there's three different patients who believe that they are the Messiah or Jesus. And so he decides to put together this experiment where he brings all three of them together and has sessions with them as a group and see how they interact with each other, see if they like submit to one of them being the Christ, and if they can actually like break away from their delusions that they have. I thought it was a pretty interesting concept, so I was looking forward to watching this. Um, but it was pretty disappointing for me. I
Mm,
don't think it really went anywhere. There were certain things about it that were predictable. In fact, there's a pretty big moment that I was able to call pretty early into the movie. Um, but yeah, it kind of bored me. And I watched it at home, which may have been part of the problem. But yeah, I have this at 13 out of 16.
okay. So then we had Underwater, and so this one, I liked some things about it. I thought the production design was pretty cool. Some of the set pieces were good, and yeah, but it was very derivative. I felt like I'd seen it kind of all before, so made it feel a little boring for
Hmm.
me. And I did kind of cringe at how they managed to get get Kristen Stewart's character in her bra and panties for long
Yeah.
scenes. We're just like, ugh, I don't know, that was kind of grown worthy to me.
Hmm.
And it's, again, if you're watching cable and it comes on, you'll be like moderately entertained. But I couldn't recommend the film. I don't think it's horrible, but I have it at 22.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. I don't think it's horrible. There's some pretty good visual effects. But yeah, for the most part, it's hard to get invested into these characters. Um, Another one where some of the deaths are pretty predictable.
Yeah.
Um, and some of the deaths fall into like negative tropes about movies that I wouldn't recommend, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
and some of the editing felt choppy to me. Like she'd
yeah.
all of a sudden she'd be fighting this animal, the sea animal, and then like I just felt like all of a sudden she's inside the ship again. I'm like, what
Mm.
happened? Where did that I missed something? And so yeah, and then like one minute the fish creature, the octopus creature, whatever, would be attacking them, and then all of a sudden it's like docile and just you can see it out the window doing nothing.
Right.
So there was some weird stuff that continuity wise as well, I thought.
Yeah. And from what I've heard, this movie was actually kind of sitting on the shelves of the studio for about 3 years.
Yeah.
And I think that may have to do with TJ Miller being in it. And I know there were some issues like during the Me Too movement with TJ
Hmm.
Miller. So I don't know. Yeah, I think it's pretty derivative, but it's fine. So I put this at 9.
Okay. All right. Then we had on the 17th, Weathering with You came out to the main public. And this was a movie I was very hyped for. It's technically 2019 release because I loved Your Name so much
Mhm.
and same director. And I think that this movie is fine. It's enjoyable. The animation is so beautiful and the music is so great that it gets a lot of it wins a lot of points for me just on that level alone. The story, it has some interesting things. It says some interesting things, but I thought that it wasn't even close to the story of Your Name. And that's one of my favorite movies I've ever seen in my life. So it's tough. It's going to be really tough to compare it to it, but I can't help but compare it to it a little bit. And it did feel like he kind of was returning to the well of the things that people liked in Your Name, as opposed
Mhm.
to really focusing on a story that would work on its own. And it's definitely my least favorite movie by Makoto Shinkai. I like his other movies better, but this was I have it at 51. I gave it three out of 5 stars in my Rotoscopers review. It it's watchable. The animation and the ideas, and I don't know. It's watchable. It was disappointing for me because I had such high expectations. But anyway, 51 is where
Okay.
I have it
How
for
would it rank?
2018.
How would it rank, do you think, if it were with 2020 movies?
With 2020 movies, I probably have it. We'll talk about I do the Sundance recap. I probably have it at 3.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, 3. Um, okay. So then we had Doolittle. You watch Doolittle?
I did. Yeah, I don't think this is as terrible as a lot of people are making it out to be, but I certainly don't think it's good either.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there seemed to be a lot of poor planning on the side of production. Um,
Yeah.
and I've heard about that before I saw this movie. I don't know how noticeable it would have been if I didn't know about that
Mm-hmm.
going into it. But yeah, for the most part, my issue with this is that it was just kind of boring.
Yeah.
And yeah, the climax I thought was pretty stupid.
Yeah, so I haven't reviewed this on Rotten Tomatoes
Hmm.
because I went to see it and I was pretty tired. I'll be honest. I
Hmm.
was tired and I fell asleep for a long time. Like not just a normal kind of head butting kind of, drowsiness. I was out. I was
Yeah.
out and when I got back, I was like, Antonio Banderas was in that movie. I was asleep the entire time he was in the movie. So that's not good. So I didn't feel like I could, with integrity, review it
Right.
since I'd been asleep. But it's starting to say something that the movie really bored me. I just didn't think. I mean, and I was awake for that bizarre dragon part.
Yep.
What on earth? So and then that I don't understand why he chose that accent. That was very weird.
Yeah.
So I have it at 30 But like I said, it's not. I would not post a review on it because I was asleep.
Right, that's fair. And I actually fell asleep during this too, not for that long. Like I didn't miss much. So I don't feel bad ranking it. So yeah, I put this at number 12 for the year
So if you
out of
want to
16.
pay for a nap, then go to Doolittle.
Yes.
That's what we learned. Okay, then Troop Zero. So I actually saw this at Sundance last year,
Right.
and so I have it in my 2019 rankings. And I thought this movie, to me, it seemed like the kind of thing that some people are gonna hate because it's very twee and very like indie cute, you know.
Hmm.
But I thought it was cute. I guess it worked enough for me.
Yeah.
Has a lot of talented people involved, and the little girl is cute, and so I have it at 73
Okay.
for
Yeah,
last year.
I do agree that this is a very sweet movie. It feels very much like movies that we got a lot in the 90s,
Yeah,
which I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Like it's been long enough. We can bring back these kind of like underdog stories. I mean, you still see those underdog stories, but I don't know if you know, like, are you feeling what I'm feeling about? Like this feels so much like the 90s type of underdog story.
like October Sky and Sandlot and kind of movies
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
or
Yeah,
like Little Giants,
yeah, I can
stuff
see
like
that.
that.
It definitely adds some Napoleon Dynamite vibes to me.
Hmm.
Also,
Yeah,
that kind of sort of deadpan kind of indie movie. Uh, but yeah, it was cute enough.
it was.
It's not the best, but it was cute
It's
enough.
yes, yes. It's not the best. It's not. It's cute enough. But I will say it's it was definitely my number one movie of January. I have it at number three for the
Uh,
year so far. Um,
the only one thing I thought was a little bit strange was I felt like they they never really dealt with any racism involving the towards the Viola Davis character.
mm,
Like she's just, I don't know, teaching, and like it's that during that time of the year. I mean, that time of in history,
yeah,
definitely would have been more conflict involving her
it's
character
it's true.
than they showed.
We do have to keep in mind this is late 70s. I think it's
Uh-huh.
like 77. So, I mean, obviously it's still an issue then. But
I
if it
was
had
thinking it
been
was
like,
earlier than that. It was late 70s, huh?
yeah, it was
Oh, okay.
77. So if it had been like 60s or 50s, I'm sure that would have been a stronger point to the story.
Hmm.
Um,
Okay. I haven't seen it since last year at Sundance, so
yeah, you're a little rusty.
they're a little
So,
rusty.
yeah.
Okay.
But I do see what you're saying. Yeah, this is the only January movie that I have in my top five of the year so far. So that should tell everyone.
Mm,
I think February is off to
yeah,
a
look
much
forward to
stronger start
February.
than January.
Okay. Color Out of Space, you saw.
Hmm. Yeah, so this is based on a H.P. Lovecraft story, which
Hmm.
it's funny because I went to see Underwater with one of my friends, and they said that it seemed kind of like an H.P. Lovecraft story. And my response was, who? So then just a few weeks later, this comes to our theater, and I hear it's about a H.P. Lovecraft um, story. So I told my friend, I'm like, we have to go see this. And wow, this was a weird movie. So it's about this family, and I guess some sort of alien object falls onto the farm they're living on, and there's some sort of creature who starts making people see things that aren't there and starts mutating like animals on the farm, and it is so weird. And Nicolas Cage is in it, so you know it's going to be bonkers. His acting is over the top, which took a little bit for me to get used to, but by the end it had really won me over, and I was definitely into the horror aspect of it. And they used a lot of practical effects, which I appreciated. They had these like monster alpacas that were actually like created instead of just CGI. So I appreciated that. But Overall, I found this to be pretty enjoyable. So I have this at number 6 for the year so far.
Okay, good. All right, you have a bunch here that you've only seen because I was busy with Sundance. So, The Gentleman.
Yes, I'll try to go through these quickly. The Gentleman's a Guy Ritchie film. It definitely feels like it's Guy Ritchie. It's a lot of style. I think it's a little bit style over substance. But there is some interesting characters and some interesting action scenes into this. Of course, some humor. So I put this at number 8.
Okay, good.
And then The Turning was the next one on the 24th. And it is a miracle that The Turning is not my lowest ranked movie of January. We can thank The
The
Grudge for
Grudge for
that.
that.
The Turning was mostly okay, tolerable until the very end when the ending like undid almost the entire movie, and it really didn't offer much closure. And I think I saw one review that said that this is as close to a cinematic like stopping in the middle of a sentence
Uh-huh.
as they've ever seen, and that's like the perfect way to describe this. The ending, like I literally yelled "What!" as soon as the credits started rolling because it felt very incomplete, and that ending took away any like decent part of the rest of the film. So this is 15 out of 16 for the year.
Okay.
And then going into another horror movie for the year was Gretel and Hansel, which I was kind of looking forward to. I thought the trailer looked pretty intriguing. I've always liked this story. But man, this was disappointing too. Visually, it looks stunning. There's a really good mood set with the visuals, the cinematography, the music. The acting is fine, but it is so boring. It's this short story we know about Gretel and Hansel, and they just drag it out an hour and a half. It can't do that successfully. It felt so much longer than it really was. So this was 14 out of 16. So my bottom 3 movies of the year so far are all terrible horror movies.
Mm.
And then,
Yeah, it's rough to be a horror fan sometimes, I
yes,
think.
it is. It is.
And the rhythm section, sorry, you
Yes.
saw.
Yes, the rhythm section, a new Blake Lively kind of revenge movie. And we've seen this so much lately, like these female-led revenge films where like
Yeah.
something happens to a family member, the lead female is just depressed, has dyed her hair black. Um, we've seen it so much lately. I don't know why. Um, and this one didn't really work for me very much. It was tolerable, it was fine, but it was so dreary, it didn't have much life to it. So I put this at 11 out of 16.
Okay, good. All right. So now I'm going to do my little Sundance uh rapid recap. And then I think then we ought to do the I'll do a we'll do two separate outros and intros because I think we do want to split it in two, if that's
Okay.
okay.
Yep.
Okay, so here we go. So here's a recap of 26 films I saw at Sundance in 2020. I think it was overall kind of a disappointing festival. I think I just got kind of bad luck in a lot of my choices. Didn't end up being as good as I wanted them to be. There weren't that many movies, I guess, that I hated, but there were some. But there were a lot that I was just kind of like, that was good, but I'm not going to have two movies from Sundance in my top 10 like I did last year. So there you go. But I'm going to go from 1 to 26 in favorite to least favorite. My favorite was a movie called Save Yourselves. Really funny movie about these hipsters that decide to go to this cabin for the weekend. They're going to get off their phones and there's an alien invasion that weekend. And it was really funny and I really enjoyed it. The ending didn't 100% work, but overall it made me laugh a lot and I really liked it. Number 2 is Dick Johnson is Dead. This is a really clever documentary about a woman. She basically is about her dad, how she is dealing with his his growing older, and the idea of him eventually someday dying. And it was really emotional, and I cried a lot, and it was really good. Number 3 is Palm Springs. This is a pretty clever time loop movie with Kristen Milioti and Andy Samberg that was clever and funny and sweet, a little rom-com. It's fun. Rebuilding Paradise. This is a documentary by Ron Howard about this town, Paradise, that was destroyed, like almost every building, by this horrible fire. And the first 20 minutes are super intense. It's all this video, people leaving the fire. And so you get invested in these people right away. And he had Hans Zimmer do the music, and that really made a big difference. Definitely recommend it. It'll be on National Geographic, probably on Disney Plus is my guess as well. So The Truffle Hunters, very funny documentary about these 3 old men in Italy who are truffle hunters, and kind of remind me of Duck Dynasty, but with Italians. I thought it was good. It was enjoyable. Then there's a movie Ironbark that I think will get a lot of play come award season. I wouldn't be surprised. At least Benedict Cumberbatch, he loses a ton of weight for the role. He definitely gives it his all. He's the citizen who's asked to do this espionage for the government, and it was good. It was a good story. It was interesting. Jessie Buckley plays his wife, who I'm in love with her after Wild Rose. So it's a good movie. Then there's 9 Days, which I think it'll be divisive. It's definitely very artsy, beautiful cinematography. It's this idea is there's this sort of way station where this man gets to decide who gets to come down to Earth or not, who's ready, and he has certain spaces, and he's dealing with the fact that one of his choices committed suicide, and he's really struggling with that. Winston Duke is so good in the movie. It's got a great cast. It's good. It's an artsy movie, but one that isn't annoying in its artsiness, if that makes sense. So then I have a movie called On the Record. It's about women in the Black community and their dealings with Me Too and their struggles with embracing the movement, and particularly these various women who were abused and harassed by Russell Simmons, the R&B mogul. So it was pretty grim, but good movie. Then there's the movie Tesla, which is really wild and really weird, with Ethan Hawke, about playing Nikola Tesla. But there's like this narrator who breaks the fourth wall, and there's all these sort of flights of fancy where they're in these period costumes, but all of a sudden one of the characters will have an iPhone, or and there's this whole scene where he sings karaoke to Tears for Fears. But I kind of liked it. I might have had Sundance brain. I don't know. We'll see how it holds up. Then Crip Camp, documentary about the disability rights movement. And it's not as much about the camp as I thought it was going to be, but it was still pretty good. Then a movie called Sylvie's Love, which is a very soapy romance, but it's Tessa Thompson and this other guy. And I liked the first half a lot more than the second half, but it was fun. Then Charm City Kings, and this tells the story about this this kid whose brother died in this motorcycle gang, but he still loves these motorcycles and wants to be in the gang. It was pretty tragic. The ending didn't really work for me. It hurt it quite a bit, but still liked it. Then Bad Hair. This is really campy, and I think people that love Sorry to Bother You will like this. I still enjoyed it more than Sorry to Bother You, but it's very silly. It's very over the top with this weave that kills people. Then Wendy. So I think this movie is beautiful. I think it has lots of interesting ideas, but it didn't 100% work for me. It was hit and miss as far as the story and the tone that they were able to get. But overall, I think the good outweighs the negatives, and I would still definitely recommend it. Some Kind of Heaven documentary about this place, The Villages in Florida, where these retirement community. The interesting thing about it is they have all of this stuff in their life to do. There's a million activities, and yet they still sometimes feel lonely. And I thought that was sort of an interesting thing to analyze. It was pretty good. Miss Americana, this is the Taylor Swift movie. It was serviceable if you want to learn more about Taylor Swift and want to know more about her music. It wasn't anything great in my opinion, and I thought they tried to give her way too much credit for they try to compare her to the Dixie Chicks, and I'm like, hold on, that was at the height of the Iraq War, and they were actual country singers. Like, if anything, coming out against Trump in 2018 as a pop singer is going to help your career, not hurt it. Give me a break. But it's fine. Then Be Water, it's a documentary about Bruce Lee. It's made by ESPN Films. I like Bruce Lee, so I found it interesting, but it's like a 30 for 30 TV doc, it's not cinematic. Then the Go-Go's, documentary about the Go-Go's, pretty standard. I wish we'd gotten a little bit more about their personal lives. We really don't learn much about who they are as people. It's just about the band, and it's pretty standard, but entertaining enough. Then there's Downhill. So I haven't seen the original French film, which I've heard is hilarious. It's one of those movies that thinks people fighting a lot is inherently funny, which it's not. And I don't know, it was just kind of unpleasant. I didn't really enjoy it, despite the efforts of the cast. Then Us Kids, you feel like a terrible person not liking this movie because it's about the Parkland kids, but it wasn't about the Parkland kids. I didn't get to know them at all. I didn't know anything about them. Everything in the movie is all stuff I already knew. And so I didn't think it was a very good documentary. So that's where it is. Then Spaceship Earth, which I was really excited about because it's about this biodome thing in the 90s. I thought it was going to be really cool. It was so boring. Ugh, they told it would just it was like going to a lecture. It was so dull. And then Worth, that's with Michael Keaton, great cast, Stanley Tucci, but I just didn't think the story was very interesting, and I felt like this story didn't need to be told. Even though it's well done. Then there's 4 Good Days. This stars Glenn Close and Mila Kunis. It starts out really strong. Mila Kunis is a drug addict, and Glenn Close is her mother. But the ending went totally off the rails. I didn't buy for a second the choices that her character made. It wasn't great. Then we have the Glorias, and this is about Gloria Steinem. And it jumps back to all these different times of her life. It tries to cover way too much. It just becomes they have this, I didn't like the narrative structure. I didn't like it literally covers every detail about her life from as a little girl. And then you have the structure of she's on this bus, on this road trip with the various versions of herself. And they're kind of making commentaries all the way through. And it has some good acting, but I thought it was kind of terrible. I didn't like it. And then then we have a Cajillionaire, which I guess this Miranda July is like it's Sundance Darling, the director. But I hated this movie. I thought it was so repetitive that she kept playing the same jokes over and over again. I didn't like any of the characters. I thought they were terrible. It had a few laughs, but then they beat those laughs into the ground. So I broke the 100%. I'm in the minority. I didn't like it at all. I thought it was so insufferable and annoying and trying to be Napoleon Dynamite and failing really bad. And then last is Horse Girl, which I hated. I thought it was pseudo sci-fi garbage. It's trying to say something about mental health and it fails spectacularly. It turns her, I hate it in movies when they take somebody that has a severe mental illness and it's like, oh, you're quirky special thing that only you have. And I hated it so much. It was painful to get through. So there you go. That is my Sundance movies that I saw.
And I've already seen Horse Girl, so
Yeah.
it could be my number one.
Oh no.
Who knows? I
Who
guess we'll have
knows?
to wait and see.
So there you go. That was Sundance 2020. So we did it. We made it through. So thanks so much for coming and doing this. I really appreciate it. It's always fun to talk about these films. And so where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter. I am the David Healy. And you can also find both of us on Facebook in a group called Film Freaks. It's facebook.com/Film Freaks Group.
Great. You can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all over social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. So check that out. And you can find all of my reviews for every single film that I watched at Sundance on my blog at rachelsreviews.net. So check that out as well. And yeah, and if you're listening on iTunes, if you could give us your ratings and reviews, we really appreciate it. And if you are listening on YouTube, please give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. We sure appreciate that as well. We have our patron group, which is really fun. So check that out. We do giveaways and exclusive content. And then also we have our merch store, which has an Animation Junkie and Smile and Frown Worthy shirts. So check that out. And thanks again, David. I really appreciate it. We'll talk again
Thank
soon.
you.